There has been a rise in very specific vehicle thefts over the last several years. Could the answer be social media? We'll take a look at some dangerous TikTok trends and the way your car might be made. This is the Daily J. I'm Zach Clark. Today's piece on auto thefts was prompted by a story we had Tuesday morning on WWJ News Radio 950. Here is anchor Jonathan Carlson.
Meanwhile, a teen from Mount Clemens in custody following an incident last night involving a stolen car, a police chase, and a handgun. According to MSP, troopers saw the driver of a Kia speeding, and after a check of the license plate, they discovered it had been stolen. Troopers tried to stop the driver, who sped away, leading them along I-696 and onto I-94, eventually crashing into a row of landscaping blocks in Mount Clemens.
According to the National Insurance Crime Bureau, the most frequently stolen car across Michigan is the Dodge Charger, followed by the Jeep Cherokee and Ford F-150. While they may not crack the top 10 here, the thefts of certain kinds of Kias and Hyundais have exploded. What is happening? Thieves were instructing people, one, on how to steal the car, and then two, there was some kind of challenge issued to steal these cars. I wonder social media, how that plays into auto theft these days, right? Things have changed.
The internet changed everything. What you're referring to with the Kias and Hyundais, it's called the TikTok Challenge. Base model Kia and Hyundai vehicles that still use the mechanical metal key for the ignition, not the push button start one. They do not have an immobilizer system in them. You can still strip the steering column and defeat the ignition. They'll break the window to get into the car, strip the plastic away from the column, and they're using a phone charger, a USB plug, and they're able to make contact electronically with that, and they start the car and they drive it away. This started with a group of kids called the Kia Boys in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a couple of years ago, and they put it on TikTok and it took off. Now every state is affected by this. A lot of the major cities in Michigan are being affected by this. Word travels fast.
That's Kyle McPhee. He spent over 30 years as a Michigan State Police Detective Sergeant. How common is this issue? The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety says that in Grand Rapids between May 1st and July 7th, there were nearly 4 thefts of either a Hyundai or a Kia vehicle every day. Oh, and that TikTok challenge? It is very real. Where does the rise in the theft of these specific models fit into the general scope of auto theft trends? There's no better person to answer that than Matt Moore. He's the Senior Vice President of the Highway Loss Data Institute. Here he is.
The interesting thing with regard to auto theft is for many, many years, auto theft was on a downward trend. During the pandemic, auto theft began to trend up. At the start of the pandemic, one of the interesting things that was going on was the theft of catalytic converters, and in particular, the theft of catalytic converters from older model Toyota Priuses. And then what was crazy, to some extent unprecedented, early in 2020, someone figured out how to steal some Hyundai Kia vehicles. And what's unique with these vehicles is that at a point in time where most other manufacturers were putting immobilizers, anti-theft devices in vehicles as standard equipment, Hyundai and Kia were not.
And we know now that when it was figured out how to steal those cars, the information went right to social media, spreading like wildfire. I want to go back to something that Matt mentioned, catalytic converters. What exactly are they, and why are they so popular with thieves? Here is our retired MSP detective Kyle again.
Its function is pollution control. The reason that there's such a high demand is money. Inside of this component, there are precious metals. There are 3 main components inside of this that are precious metals: platinum, palladium, and rhodium. If you check the prices on those precious metals, currently rhodium's at $12,400 an ounce, palladium's about the same as gold, about $1,800, and platinum's about $1,100 an ounce. So when you get 100 catalytic converters and you take them to a decanter, you can make some money. I mean, each converter has just a small thin layer on the honeycomb that's in there. But I've worked catalytic converter cases. I had an individual confess to over 1,000 thefts in the 3 joining states.
Back to the real issue today, the thefts of Kias and Hyundais. I asked WWJ Auto Beat reporter Jeff Gilbert how the companies were handling it. Have they made it a priority even though the cars with issues are all off of their lots?
Let's face it, Hyundai and Kia do not like the publicity of Hyundai and Kia vehicles being stolen. So they're obviously going to do whatever they can to protect their vehicles, even if their vehicles, the brand new ones today, are not impacted by this, and they are not. They say anything after 2021 has new technology. These are all vehicles sold before 2021, but still, no company likes to have their name in the news affiliated with something negative like car theft. Another issue, however, would be, we've learned this with recalls. Just because car companies can recall a vehicle, do fixes, things like that, not every customer gets the word. So a lot of people, despite all of the word, don't realize that their vehicles are more vulnerable to theft.
Even though auto theft is on the rise, Jeff told me that the battle between car thieves and auto manufacturers goes back to the very beginning.
This has gone back and forth, from the Henry Ford Model T days. I am sure that the first car on the market was probably the first car stolen, because that's just the nature of our existence. I remember when somebody would have to get an aftermarket alarm installed in a vehicle. Now just about every vehicle has an alarm. The Cadillac Escalade has been a vehicle that's been a target of thieves for years, and Cadillac has come up with a lot of innovations. They actually have leveling devices on it that can tell if the vehicle is going to be lifted up like to be towed and set off an alarm. So car companies and thieves are going back and forth all the time, and realize there are a number of categories of thieves. There are the professionals who are always trying to outwit the system, and then there are the crimes of opportunity. You never know who's going to go after your car, so any protection that you can have is better than no protection at all.
I asked Kyle the same question, but he took it one step further.
Even more is the car thief versus law enforcement. So I've taught over 12,000 law enforcement officers in auto theft investigation and forensic vehicle identification. I've been teaching it since 1998. I don't teach that class anymore because I used to teach officers how vehicles were hot-wired for theft. I don't teach that anymore because they don't steal cars like that. So as an investigator, you have to evolve with the technology and the new theft methods. And that leads right into the Dodge Charger and Challengers that are getting stolen, and how they're getting stolen is, quite frankly, high technology that would have never been around 20 years ago.
What do you do if you have one of these cars? Get a club. Yes, that club. The popular 1990s anti-theft device. Our insurance expert, Matt, he has more advice.
I'd make certain I had comprehensive insurance. There are multiple coverages in play in every state. Comprehensive, which is the coverage which pays for vehicle theft, along with things like if you hit an animal versus hitting another vehicle. It's not required by any state. However, if you have a loan or a lease on your vehicle, your financial institution is going to require that you have comprehensive coverage. But the dilemma here is a lot of people, once they satisfy their loan, they drop the optional coverages. And I think those who are most inclined to drop their coverages are probably those who aren't financially able to just go out and buy a replacement vehicle.
Is this a story about auto manufacturers taking shortcuts in making their vehicles? Or is it about the sometimes corrosive power of social media? Why can't it be both? Our big thanks today go out to Jeff Gilbert, Kyle McPhee, and Matt Moore. Check out WWJNewsRadio.com for the top local news stories on demand 24/7. If you want the Daily J delivered right to you, all you have to do is subscribe using the Odyssey app or get it wherever you get your podcasts. Our theme music is written and produced by Ozone Music and Sound in Southfield. I'm Zach Clark, and this is the Daily J. Thanks for listening.